Next on Newsmax Prime, could Hillary Clinton face a criminal probe over classified emails? Coming up, what could prove to be a campaign changer. Speaking of campaign changers, has Donald Trump changed the way in which candidates run for president? We'll update where he stands in the polls and follow up on his visit to the border yesterday. Plus, President Obama plans new executive orders to keep illegals in this country. You keep it right here, because Newsmax Prime starts now. Good evening. Welcome to the Friday edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, opposing views. Donald Trump says we have to keep illegals out, while President Obama is working on a way to keep them in via executive action. More on that a bit later. But first, Hillary in hot water. According to an internal government review, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton sent at least 4 emails from her personal account containing classified information while serving as Secretary of State. This according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, the Inspector General reviewed just a small sampling of her emails, meaning many more may contain potentially confidential, secret, or top secret information. And now the Justice Department has received a criminal referral to open an investigation into whether her emails were mishandled. House Speaker John Boehner reacted strongly earlier today, saying in a statement to the press, quote, "If Secretary Clinton truly has nothing to hide, she can prove it by immediately turning over her server to the proper authorities and allowing them to examine the complete record." He went on to say, quote, "Her poor judgment has undermined our national security, and it is time for her to finally do the right thing." For more on this story, we're pleased to be joined by the former Lieutenant Governor of New York and current Newsmax blogger, Betsy McCaughey. She Skypes in from New York City. And here on the anchor desk, we're joined by former Federal Prosecutor Bruce Rheinhart. Bruce, it's good to have you here at the desk, and Betsy, always via Skype, it's great to have you on Newsmax Prime. Bruce, let's get right to it. Does a criminal referral mean there is a strong belief that a crime has been committed?
Not necessarily. What it means is that there's sufficient evidence that whoever started this investigation thinks there's more to be looked at. The Inspector General has limited authority to get subpoenas and to drive down on things that the Justice Department in a formal criminal investigation can get to. And that, I think, is what's happened here. The Inspector General's taken it as far as they can. They feel like there may be a crime here, or at least there's some evidence there may be, and they want someone to look deeper.
You mentioned the Inspector General. Obviously, Bruce, all eyes are going to be on the new Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. What kind of political pressure do you think she faces? It's
a tough one because the Justice Department generally doesn't want to get involved in political investigations, or what they will perceive as political investigations, and they particularly don't want to do that during an election cycle. But there's facts out there that warrant an investigation, and I think the Attorney General is going to have to follow up on that, as uncomfortable as that might be.
So, Betsy, in politics, it said perception is reality. Is this part of the problem that has led to recent difficulties in terms of Mrs. Clinton and trust, at least in public opinion polls?
That's right. The polls suggest that this is her biggest liability. Americans don't trust her. And this call by 2, not 1, but 2 inspectors general for a criminal investigation will lead many people to believe, well, let me just paraphrase a famous movie, the lady is a crook. And that's what many people are going to conclude. Let me underscore that inspectors general are not partisan. They're appointed by the president, and they are believed to be impartial and investigators. So this call for criminal investigation by 2 inspectors general is very damning.
Well, Betsy, you paraphrased the title to a motion picture and to a song. There's a country song out there, "That's My Story and I'm Sticking to It." And essentially, that's what Secretary Clinton was doing in a recent interview with CNN. Let's take a listen to what she had to say a short time ago.
Everything I did was permitted. There was no law, there was no regulation, there was nothing that did not give me the full authority to decide how I was going to communicate.
Now, Bruce, the former First Lady is a Yale-trained attorney, and I'm just wondering, how can she claim she does this within the law when now it appears classified documents were all part of these emails and this on this server?
Well, what you're going to get here is the same explanation you get from anyone who's in a high-level position. It's going to be, I had people for this, and I trusted the people I had for this. I personally wasn't reviewing all those emails, but I had given instructions to my people that they shouldn't do something. And that's really where she's going to draw the line in the sand. It's going to be layered. It's going to be, first, it didn't happen. Then it's going to be, well, even if it did happen, I didn't know about it. And even if it did happen, it's somebody else's fault.
So, Betsy, let me turn to you. We heard what Bruce outlines here. It sounds like a delegation defense. But does that, it might work in terms of an investigation, but politically, Betsy, is that going to work or be more problematic for her?
Very much so. The buck is supposed to stop with her. And remember, she has already been reprimanded by the Inspector General for allowing anyone in the State Department to communicate via private email rather than government email. She knows it's wrong. Everybody who works in government knows that it's wrong, and it's pretty tough to cover up now.
Bruce, we've implied this, but let's talk more about it. The Inspector General had the problems here. I mentioned the Attorney General. In the process, even mindful of politics, given the fact what we saw with General Petraeus and classified documents going to someone, quote, close to him, what do you think will be the process now, and how likely are we to see any charges, any criminal charges filed?
Well, the process is it will now go to the FBI, and they will, I'm sure, open an investigation. How long that will take, I don't know. I mean, if they're doing it right, first thing I would do is I would subpoena or try to get custody of the server. I mean, like, that's what everybody wants. Let's see what's on the server. That's a determinable fact. And if they determine that there are, in fact, classified emails there, then you got to work backwards. How did they get there? Who knew about it? And that process takes time. So the harder question is, just in the normal life of any investigation, this thing is going to kind of gestate right about in the middle of the campaign next summer. And what's the Attorney General going to do then?
And not only the Attorney General, but some other folks who are serving in the executive branch right now. Betsy, as we take a look at the politics of this, this could prompt the official entry into the race of Vice President Joe Biden. So,
just what I was going to suggest as well, JD. You and I think alike. Absolutely. The more hot water Mrs. Clinton is in, the more competition she's going to have for this nomination.
And mindful of that, there's the Vice President of the United States and all that he can bring to the race as the number 2 person. Bruce, I want to circle back with you on this process, because you have said, and we've seen in other cases, the Justice Department is loath to bring a case up in the middle of a political campaign. And yet, given the content of this and the sensitivity of classified documents, it certainly sets up a dilemma. About 30 seconds for the answer here, sir.
It does create a dilemma for them because, on the one hand, they'll say to you, we're just going to treat this like any other case. And when it's ripe to make a decision, we'll make a decision. But on the other hand, they're human beings, and some of them are political animals, and some of them are career people, but all of them are going to be sensitive that they don't want to feel like they made a decision that influenced the presidential election unfairly, because the odds of actually getting an indictment, getting a case through, and getting a jury verdict by the election are very low. So that's going to be a pressure against bringing something.
And adding to the intrigue,
jury verdict before the election, all you'll need is growing doubts and growing finger pointing.
And we will see about that. Betsy, we thank you for Skyping in. You can read more from Betsy on her blog at newsmax.com/insiders. And to former federal prosecutor Bruce Rheinhart, you have our thanks for helping us understand how the law and politics can coexist. Still to come, Ellis Hennigan and Tim Jones on the horrific mass shooting in that Louisiana movie theater last night. Then later, Donald Trump wants to keep illegals out. President Obama plans executive action to keep them in. Glenn Spencer will discuss that in depth. But first, despite all the controversy, Donald Trump sits atop the latest presidential polls. Matt Towery and John Gizzi will break it down. Those stories and more as Newsmax